Okay, today we're going to talk about polar coordinates. Polar coordinates are just another way of graphing points. So we write polar coordinates as we have a radius and then we have an angle theta. So if we look at, in this problem, point A is at 5, 150 degrees. So it's going to be 5 units away from our center, which we usually have as origin. So imagine that we have this XY axis here. Here's X, here's Y. So we want to be 5 units away. So we have these concentric circles, each having a radius of 1. And we want to beat an angle of 150 degrees. So here's 150 degrees here. And so if we count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles, we get point A. Okay, what if we have a negative radius? So B is at 60 degrees and a radius of -3. So here's 60 degrees along here, but the radius is -3, so I'm going to go the opposite direction 3 to get point B. So that's just a brief description of how to graph. Here's all the stuff we need to know. These are the formulas we need to know. The first one is just like when we graph points in trig. So here's point A. We can graph A as 5, 150 degrees. It can also be 5, we can go all the way around the circle once. We can have 150 plus 360. So we can go around the circle multiple times and end up at the same point, just like in trig. So these next two formulas, or actually all the rest of these formulas, where they come from is this. Imagine I had a point, a rectangular coordinate, x, y, and I'm going to stick it out here. Well, if we make a right triangle out of this side is x, this side is y. This is the radius of my circle. So over here, x squared plus y squared is r squared. That is Pythagorean theorem done on this. The tangent of my angle theta, if this is my angle theta here, is y over x. That's also something we know. So how do we get these other two formulas? Well, if I wanted to talk about the cosine of theta, the cosine of theta is x over r. And so if I solve this for x, I multiply both sides times r, and I get x is r cosine theta. The same thing happens with y. The sine of theta is y over r. So y is r sine theta. So these are the equations we need to know to work these problems. So let's go work a few problems. Here's a problem from the homework. Find an equation equivalent to xy equals 1 in polar coordinates. So if I look at all the answers, they all have r's and thetas instead of x's and y's. So remember from just a minute ago that x is r cosine theta. So I'm going to replace x with r cosine theta. And y is r sine theta. And then I'm going to multiply, and I get r squared cosine theta sine theta equals 1. Now, really, in my opinion, that should be the answer. And it is a correct answer. The problem is that it's not up there. Okay? So if I look at answer A, that's 2r squared. Sine theta cosine theta is 1. I can't just magically stick a 2 in front. So it's not that one. If I look at answer choice D, that's 2r sine theta cosine theta. So I can't make r squared magically into 2r. So that's not the answer. So both these other answers have a sine 2 theta in them. So this is another property in trig. It's called the double angle property. And it says that the sine of 2 theta is 2 sine theta cosine theta. Now, we have this sine theta cosine theta here. We just don't have the 2. So divide both sides by 2, and I get 1/2 sine 2 theta is sine theta cosine theta. So in my opinion, they overcomplicated this problem, but whatever. It is what it is. So I have r squared times 1/2 cosine theta sine theta equals 1. So that also isn't an answer. But if I multiply by 2 to get rid of this half, then I have r squared cosine theta, sine theta equals 2, and the answer choice is B. So not many of them are this complicated, but I just wanted to go over it with you. We look at the next problem. I want to change r equals 6 secant theta into find an equation in rectangular coordinates. Okay, so I need to change this to x's and y's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by secant theta. And this was in your, if you watched the video at the beginning, this was in there. So dividing by secant theta is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of secant. And the reciprocal of secant is cosine. And what's our cosine theta? Our cosine theta is x. Okay? So we're just using those properties from the beginning. Now, which of these is a graph of r equals 4 sine theta? Okay, so the radius is 4 times sine theta. So where, since radius has to be positive, where is 4 sine theta positive? 4 sine theta is positive where the sine of theta is positive, okay, which is in this quadrant and this quadrant. So this is my answer. So just by looking at the quadrants, I can figure it out. This over here would be 4 cosine theta because cosine or x's are positive here and here. Okay, so now I want to convert from rectangular coordinates to polar coordinates. So I have 4, 4, and I want to convert that into polar coordinates. So I need the radius, comma, theta. So first I got to figure out the radius. So I'm going to draw a picture of this. So 4, 4 is here, 4, 4. So I'm going to make a right triangle. This is 4, this is 4. This is my radius. This is my theta, this angle here. So to find the radius, I do Pythagorean theorem. 4 squared plus 4 squared is r squared. So 16 and 16 is 32. I take the square root of both sides. So the square root of 32, 32 is 16 times 2. And the square root of 16 is 4. So it's 4 square root 2. Okay, now, did I really even need to do that? And the answer is no, because they all have 4 square root 2. Okay, next, I need to find the angle. So the tangent of my theta is y over x. So where is the tangent? 1. The tangent at 1 is pi over 4. Okay, and at 5 pi over 4. Now, this problem is using degrees, so I've got to know that's at 45 degrees. So the answer is 4 square root 2, comma 45 degrees. That's one way to name this point. So that's an A, that's not here, not here, not here. Okay, now, where do they get this other point here in answer A, because it is A? Oops. How is it also negative 4 square root 2, 225 degrees? Well, if we go 225 degrees, that ends us up over here. And so if I have a negative 4 radius, instead of going out this direction and ending up here, I'm going to go the opposite direction and end up where I want to end up. Okay, so that's just another way to name this exact same point. So next, let's go the opposite way. Let's go from polar to rectangular. So remember that x is r cosine theta, and 1/2 pi is the same as pi over 2, and y is r sine theta. I just got to use these formulas. So the cosine of pi over 2 is 0, so this is 0. And the sine is 1, so this is negative 3. So 0, negative 3. There we go. Okay, I hope this helped with polar coordinates.